The void between stars held secrets older than humanity itself. Captain Isabella Reyes knew this better than most, having spent 15 years commanding deep space exploration vessels. But nothing in her experience had prepared her for what hung before her now, suspended in the endless night like a pearl in an ocean of darkness. Status report, she called out to her bridge crew aboard the UNSS Horizon, her voice steady despite the tremor of excitement she felt in her chest. The massive object ahead of them defied conventional physics, its surface rippling like liquid mercury while maintaining a rigid structure that sprawled nearly 2 kilometers in length. Lieutenant Marcus Shin's fingers danced across his console, sensor readings flooding his screens. No conventional energy signatures, Captain. But, there's something else. A kind of resonance we've never encountered before. It's almost like it's breathing. Isabella leaned forward in her command chair, studying the mysterious vessel through the bridge's panoramic viewport. The ship, if it could be called that, seemed to absorb nearby starlight rather than reflect it, creating a sort of visual distortion that made her eyes water if she looked at any one spot too long. Life signs, she asked, though she already suspected the answer. This thing wasn't built by any civilization they'd encountered in their decades of space exploration. Negative, but our sensors are having trouble penetrating the hull, Marcus replied. Whatever it's made of, it's unlike any material we've encountered. Commander Raj Patel, her first officer, stepped closer to the viewport, his dark eyes narrowed in concentration. Captain, look at the surface patterns. They're changing. He was right. What had initially appeared to be random ripples were forming into complex geometric patterns that pulsed with a faint, bluish luminescence. Isabella felt a familiar tingle at the base of her skull, the same sensation she'd experienced during first contact with the Meridiani 7 years ago. But this was different, stronger, more insistent. Engineering, what's our status? She called over the ship's comm. Chief Engineer Nakamura's voice crackled back, all systems normal, Captain, but we're detecting some unusual fluctuations in our quantum core. It's almost like something's reaching out to it. Isabella's hand instinctively went to the neural interface at the base of her skull, standard issue for deep space captains, allowing direct communication with their ship's AI systems. The tingling intensified. Captain, Marcus called out, his voice tight with concern, the object is generating some kind of field. It's interfacing with our systems. Before Isabella could respond, the tingling in her neural interface exploded into a cascade of sensation. Colors she had no names for flooded her vision, and concepts too vast for human language burned themselves into her consciousness. She gripped her chair's armrests, fighting to maintain her composure as the alien presence made contact. We have waited so long. The words weren't spoken or heard, they simply existed in her mind, accompanied by emotions and memories that weren't her own. She saw vast wars fought across galaxies, civilizations rising and falling like waves on a cosmic shore, and a terrible darkness that consumed everything in its path. Captain. Raja's voice seemed to come from very far away. Your neural interface, it's glowing. Isabella forced her eyes open, unaware she had closed them. The bridge seemed dim and mundane compared to the visions still swimming through her mind. I'm all right, she managed, though her voice sounded strange to her own ears. It's trying to communicate. The darkness comes, the presence continued. We were created to fight it, but we failed. We slept, waiting for those who could complete what we began. You have the potential we sought. What darkness? Isabella whispered, aware that her crew was staring at her with mounting concern. What are you? We are the Nexus, the last creation of the precursors. We are weapon and warning, seed and harvest. The darkness that devoured our creators stirs again, and we have found you just in time. The ship's surface was fully illuminated now, patterns of light racing across its hull like neural pathways in a vast brain. Isabella felt knowledge being downloaded into her mind, technical specifications, historical records, warnings of what was to come. But more than that, she felt the ship's loneliness, its desperate need to fulfill its purpose after eons of waiting. "Captain," Marcus called out, his voice shaking slightly, "we're detecting multiple quantum signatures at the edge of the system. They don't match any known configuration." Isabella stood, her legs unsteady but her mind surprisingly clear. The Nexus had shown her what was coming, the advanced scouts of something ancient and hungry, something that had already devoured countless civilizations. "Battle stations," she ordered, her voice carrying the weight of knowledge no human was meant to bear. "And open a channel to Fleet Command. They need to know what we've found." She paused, looking at the massive vessel that had chosen her. "What's found us?" The Nexus's presence hummed in her mind, a mixture of approval and urgency. There would be no going back from this moment. Humanity's comfortable illusion of solitude in the galaxy was about to be shattered forever. But as Isabella felt the ancient ship's power thrumming through her neural interface, she knew they at least had a fighting chance. "The binding begins," the Nexus announced in her mind. "Are you prepared, Isabella Reyes, to become something more than human?" She thought of Earth, of the billions of lives ignorant of what approached from the darkness between stars. She thought of all the species that had already fallen to this ancient enemy. Her answer came without hesitation. The transformation began with pain. Isabella's neural interface burned like a star being born inside her skull, the Nexus's vast consciousness pouring through the tiny piece of technology like a tsunami through a keyhole. She was dimly aware of her crew's voices, of Raj calling for medical support, but those concerns seemed distant and unimportant compared to the universe unfolding in her mind. "The integration is difficult," the Nexus acknowledged, its thoughts tinged with concern. "Your neural architecture was not designed for this level of connection." Through gritted teeth, Isabella managed a laugh. "You don't say." She was on her knees now, one hand braced against the cold deck plating of the bridge. Sweat beaded on her forehead as her brain rewired itself to accommodate its new passenger. "Will this kill me?" "No," the ancient ship assured her. "But you will never be the same." Before she could respond, Marcus's voice cut through the haze of pain. "Captain." Multiple contacts emerging from quantum space. Isabella forced herself to her feet, using her command chair for support. Through the viewport, she watched as tears in reality itself opened like wounds in the void. Dark shapes emerged, ships, if you could call them that. They looked more like pieces of space that had decided to move on their own, their surfaces drinking in light just as the Nexus did, but without any of its geometric beauty. "The Void Hunters," she whispered, the knowledge coming from the Nexus. "They're what destroyed your creators." "They are merely fragments," the Nexus explained, "pieces of the greater darkness. But they will destroy your ship and crew if we do not act." Lieutenant Shin's hands flew over his console. Enemy vessels charging weapons. Energy signatures off the charts. Isabella straightened, forcing the pain aside. Battle stations. Evasive pattern Delta 3. Weapons, target the lead vessel. "Belay that," Raj countered, stepping between her and the crew. "Captain, you're in no condition to command. Your neural interface is showing critical readings, and you're talking to yourself. I'm relieving you of command under Regulation 47B. Isabella met his gaze, and something in her eyes made him take a step back. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that weren't quite human. "The Horizon's weapons can't hurt them, Commander. But I can." She turned to the viewport, raising her right hand. The neural interface at the base of her skull pulsed with blue light that spread through her veins like luminescent rivers. Through her connection to the Nexus, she could feel its vast weapon systems coming online, dormant power awakening after millennia of sleep. "The binding accelerates," the Nexus observed. "Your adaptation rate exceeds predictions." The Void Hunters opened fire, lances of darkness that seemed to cut through space itself streaking toward the horizon. Isabella felt rather than saw the Nexus's response, sheets of crystalline energy blooming between the human vessel and certain death. "All hands, brace for quantum translation," she called out, though her mouth didn't move. The words simply appeared in the air, visible as patterns of light. The Nexus's power flowed through her, and suddenly she could see the quantum strings that held reality together, could pluck them like a musician playing an instrument the size of the universe. The horizon vanished microseconds before the dark energy weapons would have struck, reappearing 10,000 kilometers away. The crew stumbled, and used to translations without the usual preparation time. "How?" Marcus began, but Isabella was already moving. Through her connection to the Nexus, she reached out to the nearest Void Hunter. The ancient ship's weapons were unlike anything humanity had conceived, not crude projectiles or energy beams, but tools that rewrote the laws of physics in localized areas. She chose one and activated it. Space itself seemed to crack around the target vessel, white light pouring from the fissures. The Void Hunter tried to retreat, its surface rippling in what might have been panic, but it was too late. Reality reasserted itself with the force of a supernova, and the dark ship simply ceased to exist. The remaining hunters reacted instantly, their formation shifting like a flock of predatory birds. Isabella felt their alien minds brush against her consciousness, ancient, cold, hungry. They had devoured countless civilizations, absorbed technologies beyond human comprehension, but they had never encountered anything quite like her. "They fear us," the Nexus noted with grim satisfaction. "They remember what my creators could do, before the fall." Isabella nodded, though the gesture seemed quaint now, too human for what she was becoming. "Then let's remind them why they should." The battle that followed defied description in any human language. Isabella and the Nexus moved as one, quantum dancing through spacetime as they engaged the hunters. Traditional naval combat doctrine meant nothing here. This was a battle of minds and mathematics, of rewriting local physics faster than your opponent could adapt to the changes. The Horizon's crew watched in stunned silence as their captain, standing motionless on the bridge, conducted a symphony of destruction. Void Hunters twisted and vanished, torn apart by forces that human science had barely theorized about. But with each victory, the pain in Isabella's head grew worse. "The integration strains your physical form," the Nexus warned. "We must complete the binding soon, or you will burn out." "Not yet," Isabella growled. "Two more." She could feel blood trickling from her nose, taste copper on her tongue. Her vision swam with quantum probabilities and parallel timelines. The final hunters fell back, perhaps realizing that this prey was beyond their capabilities. As they prepared to retreat into quantum space, Isabella reached out one last time. The laws of thermodynamics bent around her will, and absolute zero claimed the dark ships, freezing them in both space and time. Then, finally, she allowed herself to collapse. Raj caught her before she hit the deck, lowering her gently to the floor. Through dimming vision, she saw the concern on his face, heard him calling for medical assistance. But all she could focus on was the Nexus's urgent presence in her mind. "The scouts are destroyed, but they have sent warning to the greater darkness. We have little time." "How long?" she managed to whisper. "Months, perhaps. They will gather their strength before returning. We must complete your transformation before then. You must become more than what you are." Isabella closed her eyes, feeling changes already coursing through her body at the cellular level. The Nexus was rewriting her, preparing her for what was to come. Her last thought before unconsciousness claimed her was a quiet acknowledgement that humanity's comfortable solitude in the galaxy was truly over. The medical bay of the UNSS Horizon had never been designed to handle whatever Isabella Reyes was becoming. Dr. Nathaniel Reed watched the readings on his diagnostic screens with a mixture of fascination and horror as they displayed impossible data about his captain's transformation. "Her cellular structure is rewriting itself," he explained to Commander Raj, who hadn't left the medical bay in the 3 days since the battle. The quantum particles from her neural interface have spread throughout her entire nervous system. She's not just interfacing with the alien ship anymore, she's becoming something entirely new. Through the observation window, they could see Isabella floating in a containment field, her body occasionally pulsing with waves of blue light that matched the patterns now flowing across the Nexus's hull. The massive alien vessel had positioned itself alongside the horizon, maintaining a protective stance that made the crew both grateful and uneasy. "Can you stop it?" Raj asked, though he already knew the answer. "Stop it?" Reed shook his head. "I'm not even sure what it is. Look at this." He gestured to a molecular scan. Her DNA is restructuring itself in real time, incorporating patterns that match the quantum signature of that ship. It's like nothing in medical science. Before Raj could respond, Isabella's eyes snapped open. They glowed with the same inner light that coursed through her veins, and when she spoke, her voice resonated with harmonics that made the medical equipment vibrate. "The fleet is coming," she announced. The containment field dissolved around her as if it had never existed, and she stood with an ethereal grace that made her seem more avatar than human. "We need to prepare." Raj stepped forward, concern evident in his features. "Isabella, are you still you?" She turned to him, and for a moment her expression softened into something recognizably human. "I'm more than I was, Raj. But yes, I'm still me. Just, expanded." She flexed her fingers, watching patterns of light play across her skin. "The Nexus is showing me things about the universe that human science hasn't even dreamed of yet. And we're going to need all of it." "The Void Hunters?" Dr. Reed asked. "Their main fleet approaches. The scouts we destroyed were just the beginning." She walked to the viewport, placing her hand against the transparent material. The Nexus pulsed in response, acknowledging its partner. "They've consumed thousands of civilizations, absorbed their technologies and knowledge. What we fought before was nothing compared to what's coming." As if to emphasize her point, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Lieutenant Shin's voice came over the comm, multiple quantum ruptures detected at the edge of the system. Massive energy signatures, nothing like the scouts. Isabella was already moving, her feet barely seeming to touch the deck as she made her way to the bridge. Raj and Reed followed, struggling to keep up with her enhanced pace. When they arrived, the bridge viewport showed a sight that stole the breath from their lungs. The quantum ruptures were enormous, tears in spacetime that stretched for thousands of kilometers. From these wounds in reality emerged ships that dwarfed even the Nexus, vast, dark constructs that seemed to be built from condensed shadow itself. Their surfaces writhed with captured technologies from dead civilizations, a testament to countless genocides. 37 capital ships, Isabella announced, her voice distant as she processed data through her connection with the Nexus. Each one carrying the absorbed essence of an entire civilization. "They're not just here to destroy us, they want to consume us, add our uniqueness to their own. What can we do against something like that?" Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. Isabella smiled, but there was something terrible in it, a hint of the inhuman power she now wielded. "We show them that humanity isn't as defenseless as they think." She raised her hands, and the bridge lights dimmed as she drew power through her connection to the Nexus. The precursors weren't defeated because they were weak. They were defeated because they weren't willing to go far enough. "The final protocols are ready," the Nexus's voice echoed in her mind. "But the change required, there will be no returning from it." "I understand," Isabella replied aloud. She turned to her crew, her eyes burning with inner fire. "What I'm about to do, it's beyond anything in human experience. I need you to trust me." Raj stepped forward, standing at attention. "We're with you, Captain. Whatever it takes." Isabella nodded, grateful for his loyalty even as she prepared to transcend everything he understood about reality. She reached out, not with her hands but with her transformed consciousness, connecting to the Nexus's most powerful and dangerous systems. The massive alien vessel began to change, its surface flowing like quicksilver as it reconfigured itself. But this time, the transformation didn't stop with the ship. Energy cascaded between the Nexus and Isabella, and the bridge crew watched in awe as their captain began to glow with power that defied comprehension. They thought the precursors were dead, Isabella said, her voice carrying harmonics that made reality itself vibrate in sympathy. But they just seated themselves across the cosmos, waiting for the right moment, the right species, to continue their work. She turned to the viewport, facing the approaching Void Hunter fleet. Humanity is that species. And I am the key. The transformation accelerated. Isabella's form became increasingly difficult to look at directly, as if she existed in more dimensions than human eyes could process. The Nexus's hull began to merge with the horizon, quantum tendrils of living metal spreading across the human vessel. The synthesis begins, the Nexus announced in her mind. Are you prepared for godhood, Isabella Reyes? She thought of Earth, of humanity's dreams of the stars, of all the civilizations that had already fallen to the approaching darkness. Her answer came not in words but in pure intention, a commitment to become whatever was necessary to ensure survival. The Void Hunters opened fire, weapons that could crack planets streaming toward the transformed vessels. But Isabella was ready. She had seen the end of this battle in quantum possibilities, had calculated every move and countermove across probability space. The war for reality itself was about to begin, and humanity's champion was no longer entirely human. The price of power. The battle began in dimensions humanity had never known existed. Isabella, or what she had become, moved through quantum space like a dancer through water, each motion rippling through multiple layers of reality. The merged form of the Horizon and Nexus responded to her will as naturally as breathing, their combined technologies creating possibilities that defied conventional physics. The Void Hunter fleet spread out in an attack formation that spanned both normal space and higher dimensions. Their weapons were entropy itself, concentrated destruction that could unravel the atomic bonds of anything they touched. But Isabella saw the patterns within patterns, the mathematical poetry of combat at this scale. Their weapons can't touch what they can't define, she explained to her crew, her voice resonating through the ship's quantum-enhanced systems. We're no longer bound by single-state existence. The bridge crew watched in awe as their transformed captain conducted a war that their human minds could barely comprehend. The viewport showed only fragments of the true battle, flashes of light and darkness as ships phased between states of existence, weapons fired that curved through impossible angles, and reality itself buckling under the strain. But even as Isabella wielded power beyond human comprehension, something was wrong. Raj noticed it first, moments where she seemed to flicker, her form becoming transparent before solidifying again. The Nexus's systems pulsed erratically, as if struggling to maintain the merger. The synthesis is destabilizing, the Nexus warned in her mind. Your human consciousness cannot contain this level of power indefinitely. How long? Isabella asked through gritted teeth, redirecting a Void Hunter attack into a quantum sink that she'd created from folded spacetime. Hours at most. The transformation must be completed, or the power will burn you away entirely. A massive blast from the Void Hunter flagship tore through their defensive fields, sending shockwaves through both ships. Isabella stumbled, blood trickling from her nose as she struggled to maintain control. The merged vessels groaned, systems straining under the assault. Captain! Marcus called out, his sensors overwhelming with data. They're targeting something specific, the quantum core where the ships are merged. Isabella saw it too late. The Void Hunters had analyzed their weaknesses, identified the precise point where human and precursor technologies interfaced. Their next attack came from multiple dimensions simultaneously, focusing devastating power on that single crucial point. The impact threw everyone to the deck. Emergency sirens blared as systems began to fail. Isabella felt the connection between the ship starting to tear apart, and with it, her own transformed consciousness began to fragment. No, she screamed, trying to hold everything together through sheer force of will. But the power was slipping away, and with it, their only chance of survival. There is one option remaining, the Nexus offered, its voice weak in her mind. But the cost? Tell me, Isabella demanded, watching as the Void Hunter fleet regrouped for another attack. The precursors created failsafes, protocols for total conversion. Not just merging ships or enhancing humans, but complete transformation into a new form of existence. But it would mean the end of everything you are now. Isabella Reyes would cease to exist. She looked at her crew, at Raja's concerned face, at Marcus's determined expression, at all the humans depending on her to protect them. Then she looked beyond, to Earth and the billions of lives that would be extinguished if the Void Hunters won. How do we do it? The process requires a sacrifice. A conscious choice to give up your humanity entirely. The power you've wielded so far has been a fraction of what's possible because you've tried to remain human. To access the full potential of the precursor legacy, you must willingly surrender everything you are. The Void Hunters launched their next attack, reality-destroying weapons converging on their position. Isabella raised her hands, buying them seconds with a desperate defense, but she could feel her power continuing to fade. If I do this, she asked, can we win? Victory becomes possible. But Isabella Reyes will die. What emerges will be something else entirely. She closed her eyes, feeling tears that might be her last human expression. Then let's give them a proper goodbye. Isabella turned to her crew, her form already beginning to change as she initiated the protocol. Get to the escape pods. All of you. What's about to happen? Human bodies can't survive it. Captain, Raj stepped forward, but she raised a hand to stop him. I'm not your captain anymore, Raj. I'm something else. Something that has to be, for all of us to survive. Her voice carried harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. Go. Live. Remember who I was, but don't mourn me. What I'm becoming, it's necessary. The crew hesitated, but the command in her voice, the last truly human command she would ever give, compelled them to obey. As they evacuated, Isabella turned back to face the Void Hunter fleet. She could feel the final transformation beginning, reality itself bending around her as she prepared to become something beyond human comprehension. The protocols are ready, the Nexus announced. Shall we show them what a true transcendence looks like? Isabella Reyes took her last human breath, looked out at the enemies threatening everything she had sworn to protect, and let go of her humanity. The transformation that followed would rewrite the very nature of spacetime itself. The war for reality was about to enter its final phase, and what emerged from that chrysalis of power would change the universe forever. Symphony of Stars. The being that had once been Isabella Reyes emerged from the chrysalis of transformation as something the universe had never seen before. The merged form of the Horizon and Nexus was gone, replaced by an entity that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions, a quantum symphony made manifest in reality. From the relative safety of their escape pods, the crew watched in awe as their former captain became a creature of pure energy and possibility, her consciousness expanded beyond the boundaries of conventional existence. She was a living constellation, a nexus of power that bent light and darkness to her will. The Void Hunters reacted immediately, their weapons converging on this new threat. But where before their attacks had strained her defenses, now they passed through her like shadows through light. She existed in too many states simultaneously for their entropy weapons to find purchase. We are beyond their understanding now, the Nexus's consciousness merged with her own, no longer two beings communicating but a single entity of unprecedented power. Shall we show them true transcendence? The answer came not in words but in action. The entity reached out with appendages of pure quantum energy, grasping the fabric of spacetime itself. Reality rippled around her as she began to implement the precursor's final protocol, not just a weapon, but a fundamental restructuring of how existence itself functioned. The Void Hunters sensed the danger too late. Their fleet, massive as it was, suddenly seemed small against the scale of what they faced. The entity that had been Isabella began to sing, not with sound but with quantum harmonics that resonated through every dimension of reality. From his escape pod, Raj watched the impossible unfold. The space around the battle began to crystallize, forming patterns that hurt his eyes to look at. It was as if reality itself was being rewritten, the basic laws of physics being reprogrammed at their most fundamental level. The Void Hunters tried to retreat, their dark ships attempting to tear open quantum rifts to escape. But they found themselves trapped in a cage of crystallized spacetime, their stolen technologies useless against laws of physics that no longer obeyed their understanding. The entity's song reached its crescendo, and the crystallization accelerated. The Void Hunters' ships began to transform, their absorbed technologies and stolen knowledge being forcibly extracted and reformed. The darkness that had driven them, that ancient hunger that had consumed so many civilizations, was being systematically unraveled. They thought they understood consumption, the entity communicated, her thoughts reaching not just her former crew but every consciousness in the battle sphere. But we understand transformation. Evolution. Transcendence. The Void Hunters fought back with desperate fury, unleashing weapons that could have cracked planets. But in this crystallized realm of reformed physics, their power found no purchase. One by one, their ships were caught in the transformation, their essence being broken down and rewritten at the quantum level. The entity that had been Isabella reached the flagship last, touching it with tendrils of pure possibility. Instead of destroying it, she began a different kind of transformation. The darkness within was not eliminated but transmuted, changed from a force of consumption to one of creation. You sought to absorb all life, she communicated to the ancient consciousness within. Now you will serve it instead. The transformation completed with a flash of light that briefly outshone the local sun. Where the Void Hunter fleet had been, there now floated a field of crystalline structures, organic, growing things that pulsed with their own inner light. The darkness had been transformed into vessels of creation, their hunger for destruction converted into a drive to nurture and protect. The entity hovered in space, her form shifting through possibilities as she observed her work. The threat was ended, not through destruction but through fundamental change. But the price had been beyond measure. In the escape pods, the crew of the Horizon watched in silence as their former captain turned her attention to them. Her form coalesced briefly into something almost human, though the power radiating from her made it impossible to look at her directly. The war is over, she communicated, her thoughts carrying emotions that human languages had no words for. The darkness is transformed, and with it, the nature of reality itself. You are safe now. Captain, Raj transmitted, his voice thick with emotion. Can you come back? The entity's form flickered with what might have been sadness. Isabella Reyes fulfilled her purpose. What I am now must serve a different role. The universe is changing, evolving. It needs guardians who understand both the human and the infinite. She expanded, her consciousness touching each of them briefly, sharing a moment of connection that they would remember for the rest of their lives. Return to Earth. Tell them what happened here. Prepare humanity for what comes next. Evolution doesn't end, it only changes form. Before their eyes, she began to fade, her existence shifting into higher dimensions beyond human perception. The crystalline structures that had been the Void Hunter fleet pulsed in harmony, beginning their own journey of transformation. Remember, her final communication reached them, carrying echoes of the human she had once been. Remember that when faced with darkness, we chose to create light. Remember that humanity's greatest strength isn't in destroying our enemies, but in transforming them. Remember that evolution isn't about what we leave behind, but what we become. With that, she was gone, ascended to a level of existence beyond human understanding. But she left behind more than memories. The crystalline structures began to move, taking up protective positions around the escape pods. They would escort the crew home, the first guardians of a new age. In the silence of space, where a battle for reality itself had been fought and won, the universe continued its eternal dance. But it danced to a different rhythm now, one that spoke of transformation instead of destruction, of evolution instead of entropy. And somewhere, in dimensions beyond human perception, the entity that had once been Isabella Reyes continued her own evolution, watching over a universe that was itself learning to transcend its own limitations. The end was really just another beginning.